Board Game Binge. Bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry.
I think a lot of people try to hide their idea, and I think you need to just share it.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna do it.
Now, you have some experience in licensing as well, and we didn't get to this on our last interview with you. Can you talk a little bit about the licensing world?
Yeah, the licensing world is very interesting and very expensive.
Yeah.
Um, you see licensed games all the time on Kickstarter,
Hmm.
and if they're a first-time creator, guaranteed they are their big company or whoever owns that IP just built a Kickstarter page. Very rarely will first time creators get an IP. And by IP, I mean intellectual property,
Yep.
like pick a TV show, they get that property to build a game around. And in the licensing world, there's kind of this idea that licensed games suck. And the
Okay.
reason for that is because these big toy and game companies own those licenses for games.
Yeah.
And they will, I've seen it time and time again. I've been contacted by many of the big players saying, hey, we have the Indiana Jones license. Can you make a game around it? And when you go that way, you just end up with crap. There's rare exceptions. The Game of Thrones board game is great.
Yeah.
But outside of that, everything from the choose your own adventure games to the boys game on Kickstarter right now, if you want to look at one that you can just tell the gameplay was an afterthought. And so that said, most of the licensors are big players with deep pockets.
Yeah.
And if you want to push into that, you have to have a very special and unique idea. And the way that it works is if you pick an IP that somebody's already using in a toy,
Hmm.
their agreement might cover board games and you might just be out of luck.
Oh,
And
wow.
so what I would say is if you want to go after intellectual property and kind of use that to sell your product, you have to have a really kick-ass idea. It's got to be a brand new play pattern, something super unique, something that they will see and say, this is going to make us a lot of money because that's all they care about. And then on top of that, you have people that will say, oh, I'm going to go get the Marvel license. And Disney won't even talk to you unless you're willing to front $1 million.
Oh, wow.
Or you have a track record of a couple million in sales. Or your idea is just so incredibly unique and
Hmm.
amazing, and you were chummy enough with the licensor to pull it off, a good salesperson. Those I would say are the three kind of unique opportunities in licensing. Now I've licensed one of my products to Warner Brothers,
Wow.
and that gets really hairy. They own so many properties and they need all sorts of permissions. So it's right. Let me see. It's this right here. It's a
Oh, it's the Lightbright, 3D Lightbright, right?
yeah. So one of my patents. You mentioned the patents. I own
Yeah.
any three-dimensional light emitting toy. It's a very broad patent. It was granted last year. It's essentially, for those listening, just a three-dimensional light bright. Think in the shape of like a pop vinyl figure or a
Hmm.
vinyl collectible figure with holes that you can fill with different colored pegs, and there's LEDs inside.
So did they approach you or did you approach them?
So I approached them. I brought my Glowbot, is what it's called,
Hmm.
and I made it into an Iron Man. And I basically approached a mother company. So the mother company owns all these different licenses in the toy and game world, and they'll see the product, they like it, they'll go shop it around. And so I actually made a Captain America and an Iron Man. I was shooting for the moon,
Yeah.
and I turned off all the lights in the pitch meeting, and I had it under a box, and I lifted up the box,
Yeah.
and the president of the company, just his jaw just hit the floor, and he's like, we're taking this, done.
That's awesome.
And then so then they showed Disney, and they got pretty far with Disney, but again, really expensive. and Warner Brothers was willing to give us Batman. So we got Batman, Wonder Woman, Joker, Harley Quinn, and that one will hopefully launch sometime this year.
So did you go through like a broker? Like, so how did you get to this? So this company that licensed the properties, they've got arrangements with Disney and these groups. Is that how that works?
Yeah. And so what that does is that helps you bypass those 3 clauses, right? You either need to have a ton of money up front.
Yeah.
You need to have a real good track record of sales, or just get incredibly lucky, or your aunt is in charge and you just gotta talk to your aunt. And so we went with the middle one. We partnered with one of the biggest toy manufacturers in the world, Goliath Games.
Wow.
And so they were able to say, look, we're helping with this. And so that brought us this huge track record of sales. So then they were willing to partner with us. Now, there's a couple of ways that you meet those types of people. And I would say, you know, with COVID, none of this is happening. But if you want to get into this world, I would start, as soon as it starts back up, hopefully 2021, the toy and the game shows. And you want to be very particular about them, because GAMA is a great show, but it is a mall. It is a shopping center. It is open to the public, and it is a huge waste of time from a creator perspective. But the good ones are New York Toy Fair, Nuremberg Toy Fair, Chicago Toy and Game Show. There's one in Texas that I can't remember, but the Chicago Toy and Game Show has a whole section dedicated to creators, and the licensors from Disney and Warner Brothers just walk around with a notepad and they'll say, "What's this?" And you have 30 seconds and they'll write some stuff down and move on. And so we took our first game, Builder Boom, to one of the toy shows. And I remember this old lady walked by, and I was so burnt out. This was New York Toy Fair. And I read her plaque and it said Disney. And I was like, all right, let's lay down on the floor, because this game's best played on the floor. It's a kid's game.
Yeah.
And she like looked at me over her glasses, this old lady. She's like, "You want me on the floor?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I'll help you down. I'll help you up. Like, let's do this." And she thought that that was so awesome and so funny. And she had the best time. And she's like, "We'll be back." And then she left, and the execs of Hasbro, Goliath, and Spin Master were just following her around. And in 2 seconds, they were like, "Who was that? That was Disney, right?" Yes. "Okay, what did she want? Show us your game. We want it." Just because she was interested in it.
That's crazy. Board Game Binge. Bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry.